So, folks, let's talk about the possibility of President AOC, which is looking a lot more likely now than it did like a week ago. And as I'm recording this, it's February 16th, and over the past weekend, AOC was in Munich doing an uncharacteristic overseas appearance to discuss American foreign policy, as well as, to a lesser degree, domestic policy, and the ideas around populism. That populism was kind of like the big thing everyone wanted to discuss, and it was interesting to see her, as like a sitting member of the House, go overseas and talk about America. It's uncharacteristic. It was a strange move for a member of the House. Not unheard of, but like a little strange. A little bit like, oh, what's happening here? And one of the things I wanted to talk about was specifically this article from NBC News, AOC to offer a working class perspective on U.S. foreign policy at Munich summit. Now, this was written, 4 days ago, and interestingly, here, you go down. Yes, here we go. A lawmaker said that Ocasio-Cortez's friends, allies, and advisors around her are asking the right questions and pushing her in the right direction where that is a possibility. Specifically, where she runs for president. A New York delegation colleague also said they believe Ocasio-Cortez is leaning towards a presidential bid rather than a run for Senate in 2028. So, one of the things I've been on the fence about has been whether or not she's going to actually make a stab at the presidency. And my feelings up until now have largely been, well, it's too early. She's going to go and try and unseat Schumer. Clearly, Schumer is deeply unpopular. Now would be the time to do it. But also, one of the interesting things has been a bunch of folks have been crunching the numbers. The New Republic had their own internal polling done in order to essentially figure out where things stand here. And it's pretty interesting. Here we go. What Democrats want, etc., etc. A lot of interesting data in here. But one of the most interesting things about this to me was in this poll of Democrats, the most favorably viewed Democrat that was polled on was AOC. She's more popular and favorably viewed than Kamala Harris, than Gavin Newsom, than Pete Buttigieg, than Joe Biden, than Gretchen Whitmer, than Hakeem Jeffries, than J.B. Pritzker, than basically anybody else in the Democratic Party right now. Okay? And that's pretty interesting, isn't it? That's pretty interesting. And what's also interesting is that when you put this together with NBC's reporting on what her colleagues have said, on what her friends and allies and advisors have been saying, and what some of the scuttlebutt has been internally to the Democratic Party, it seems like maybe she's going to be running in 2028. And what's really interesting is that I think she has a good chance at winning if she does run. And I will also say that even if she does not succeed, running would still be a net positive for her political career. Like, she has been touring the country with Bernie Sanders. She's been helping to turn out these big crowds. She's been effectively co-signed by Bernie Sanders over the last year. And I think that even if she lost in a primary, I think that there's a good chance that would set her up excellently for a run at the presidency in 2032, right? And so there's not really a downside for her to attempt to run other than to plant her flag in what her consistent ideological beliefs have been, which have been unambiguously pro-working class. And I think that that is actually a huge win. I think that's actually a huge positive. So there's really no downside for her running. I imagine the downside would be more confined to her relationships with other people in Congress, and people ruffling feathers the wrong way by running up against neolibs like Gavin Newsom or Pete Buttigieg. And so I think that this could be good. And the polling really indicates here that any of the previous ambitions of the neoliberal wing of the party to effectively carve out a conservative wing, relatively, the blue dog Democrats, the Joe Manchins of the party, they're effectively a non-existent force within the Democrats at this point. I mean, the polling here from the New Republic is pretty interesting, to say the least. Yeah, we want to understand where you fall on the political spectrum. Which of these best describes your views? 3% said conservative, 12% said moderate, 21% said moderate to liberal, but 31% said liberal and 32% said progressive. So 63% of the Democratic Party identifies as liberal or progressive, which, to be honest with you, there might be some generational divides here because, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, if someone called you a liberal, they were essentially calling you a communist. And so like there might be some nebulousness on how that label is read at this point. But that being said, 63% being aligned in this direction is very good. Effectively, the conservative wing at this point within the Democrats is the moderate to liberal and moderate wing of the party, which are not great, considering that AOC has an 85% favorability view in the eyes of that mix. She's clearly winning over not just the liberal and progressive wing, she's clearly winning over even many of the moderates as well, which is really, really important when you're talking about a general election. Which, I know we're putting the cart before the horse here, even talking about the general before the primary, but considering that she's much more popular than Gavin Newsom to the Democratic base, that's important information, AOC could be the working class hero. Well, yeah, I'm reminded of the fact that Republicans continuously bash AOC for being dumb or being like, oh, she's just a bartender. And like, that's one of her biggest strengths, that she was just a bartender. She's just like any one of you could have been. That's good. Also, the entire framing of her being dumb is largely manufactured. To be completely honest with you guys, it's just, how do I put this? You know how Donald Trump just goes on insane, barely legible rants on social media, or will just have verbal diarrhea nonstop, and then the New York Times will like report on it and be like, yes, this is what he was actually trying to say through his mouth slop. And like, they sane wash him. They sane wash him constantly. They rehabilitate the verbal diarrhea he creates constantly. But when AOC says or like has like a moment where she stumbles in conversation, then suddenly they're like, oh, AOC, barely articulate, stumbles through the conversation. And it's like, no, that was like 1 minute in like a 3-hour long talk. And so it's bizarre, to say the least, but I don't think the major attacks against AOC at all stick once she's in front of a crowd, once she's in front of people, once she's actually talking with voters. Like, it is a positive that she is of the working class. And it is a positive that their attempt to smear her as dumb is like just obviously a lie. And so, yeah, it might even be sexist. Interesting idea. Exactly, Ivan Holmes. I think that there is a lot going on here that indicates that this could genuinely be a great idea. And I wanted to play this for you guys.
Welcome, everybody.
Oh, God. This is her roundtable discussion at the Munich Security Conference. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this because I think in this, she is able to put a flag clearly on where she stands regarding a lot of working folks. And I see her engaging with geopolitics in a way and with a level of consideration that I think indicates where her head is at regarding an attempt at the presidency. I think she might go for it. I spent my day going over her multiple appearances at the Munich conference, and this one where she talks about responding to the rise of populism, I think really rings accurate. And she also did a talk in Berlin at a university, and I think that especially early on in that, we'll probably take a little bit of a look at that as well. She does a really good job articulating exactly what she thinks the guiding principle of a left movement should be. And I think I am cautiously optimistic for this. If it is a choice between a person who is going to fight for the working class and Gavin Newsom, I know where my vote's going to be. But let's take a look.
To this town hall on the rise of populism. We have real star power on this panel, but one thing we don't have is an actual far-right populist. So I thought I'd represent one at the outset. His name is Guido Reil. He is an old contact from the AfD in the northern town of Essen, in the post-industrial part of Western Germany. Guido was a miner, like his father and grandfather before him, until the mine closed a few years ago. He joined the Union when he was 18, he joined the Social Democrats when he was 20, but 10 years ago he switched to the AfD. The immediate reason he did was because in 2016 he organized a protest against what he thought were too many refugees being settled in the northern part of Essen, his part of Essen, the poor part of Essen, where he said schools were already struggling, where affordable housing was already scarce, where food banks were already overwhelmed. He said North Essen couldn't cope. The SPD, the Social Democrats, banned the protest, so he left. The deeper reason he left, he said, was that he felt that the Social Democrats had betrayed its base, working class base, people like him. He didn't feel at home anymore. They had become the elite. And so for him, there is something going on that means that the center-right and the center-left have become practically indistinguishable. The choice is no longer left and right. The choice is kind of between the people and the elite.
And to a degree, I know she's sketching out someone who shifted to pro-AfD, but to a degree, what is being articulated here is essentially a simplified version of what has happened. Capitalism is collapsing our political systems into essentially, are you a fascist or are you fighting against fascism? And obviously there's a lot of disagreement in that regarding like, how are you going to fight it? What is your political ideology as you fight it, etc. But it is genuinely collapsing support into two main sides. And it just so happens that the fascists support big business. They support the oligarchs. They support the elites. And they do it all while pointing fingers at, the root of all your problems are those poor immigrants that moved into your neighborhood. Yeah, it's the poor immigrants. No, it's the trans people. It's the degenerates. It's the Muslims. It's the Jews. And so you get like a bunch of these points, and it is all there to distract from the fascist power grab that serves the oligarchy. that serves the powerful. And on the other hand, you have essentially a bunch of different ideologies being compressed together. You have liberal and socialist and anarcho-communist all being crushed together in the anti-fascist category. And I think that that's kind of where we find ourselves right now, where people are realizing that, like, you can't be a moderate through a time when there are masked gunmen roving our streets and pulling citizen and non-citizen alike into concentration camps. You just cannot be a moderate in that environment. And, you know, I mean, Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer will definitely try, but it's just not coherent. It's not possible for them to do it. I do wonder why AOC decided to talk with SPD over Die Linke. She talked to both. So that your answer is that she talked to both. We're just looking at this one.
Germany is kind of a special case because the Social Democrats have not just mimicked center-right economic policies, they've actually governed with the center-right many times.
Which is exactly the problem. Neoliberalism was the embracing of conservatism by the liberal wing of not just in the United States, but in many other countries around the world. And this relative harmony has led to a complete abandonment of the working class. And it's what brings us, folks who thought Donald Trump would make their day-to-day lives more financially viable, better, even. And it's why you get people increasingly disillusioned with the Democratic Party. And it's also why you're starting now to see more and more people disillusioned with Donald Trump, because it's becoming grossly apparent that he's not helping working class people at all. And now I would argue that that has been apparent for quite some time, but other people are slower at the uptake. And that's, that just happens sometimes. Many fascists think they're moderate. Many fascists don't know what fascism is. They just kind of go with the flow, and the flow in their spheres of existence just happens to be in the direction of fascism. Yes.
They're in government with them now. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, you are a Democrat. You are a member of the House of Representatives.
I'm sorry, gas is not much cheaper now. I was buying gas last year. I'm buying gas this year. I'm spending approximately the same amount on gas. And I'm sorry, if you think that, like, Donald Trump's policies that have lost the United States billions of dollars and put a unilateral tax on you to the tune of billions of dollars, that, you saving 10 cents on gas per gallon is going to make up for it. Like, no, it's not. You're a fool, and you've been taken for a ride. He's handing you pennies while taking billions of dollars from the rest of us. Don't be a sucker.
Has the left betrayed the people? Has your party betrayed its base?
Yes, what was the name of the individual from your story?
Guido.
Guido. It's funny that you asked this question because...
Is the mic working?
Is the microphone on? Okay, thank you. Thank you. It's funny that you asked this question about Guido, because in many ways I relate to him. I share many aspects of his story. I was first elected when I was in 2018, and I was a waitress in New York City. I had no health insurance. I could not pay my rent, and I consistently saw a party that championed special interests, the elite, and a Democratic Party that was very much kind of telling working people that everything was fine when it in fact wasn't. And after I was elected, I remember I was crossing this threshold, and there's this closed door meeting of many high-ranking Democratic Party officials, people that you see in the news and all of that. And they they derided behind closed doors at that time, a long time ago. They derided many of the populist demands that I had run my campaign on. And I had defeated a 20-year Democratic incumbent that was part of Democratic Party leadership. And they said $15 minimum wage at that time, way too high, too severe. The idea of tuition-free public colleges and universities, too far. Expanding health insurance and Medicare, too extreme. And these were all the things that I, as a waitress, had campaigned on and had been major pain points in my life. And then they said, we have to listen to working class people more. And I think that...
Yeah. This is exactly what happened, right? Like, for years, the progressive wing of the Democratic Party has been saying, hey, Medicare for all. Hey, housing first. Hey, what if we just didn't embrace open, savage cruelty to working class people? Hey, what if we didn't just throw unemployed minors into coding classes? What if instead we had actual jobs programs to bring back rural manufacturing communities back to life? What if we, did something like, hey, what about a Green New Deal? Like, where we would make the United States the new manufacturing hub for the entire planet for green energy, for solar panels, for wind turbines, etc. What if we did that in all of these dying rural towns that have had their jobs shipped overseas by greedy capitalists? And instead of doing anything remotely like that, Democrats kowtowed to Republicans, kowtowed to Donald Trump, kowtowed to a lot of these folks championing big oil and natural gas and clean coal, and coal continues to decline even under Donald Trump, the champion of coal. Even though all of these efforts that Republicans have put forward only serve the wealthiest people on the planet. It just seems to me that now that the Democratic Party is really on board with we need to listen to what working people are into. It's like, where was that when Kamala Harris was running? And she was getting all of her economic notes and policies from a CEO or executive at Uber. Where was this? We need to listen to the working class at literally every single moment that it mattered over the last, 10 years. And the reality of it is that Democrats sold out the working class for their richest donors, who are also the rich donors behind the Republican Party. In a lot of cases, it is incredible. I don't know. It is very frustrating. As somebody on the left who watched this all happen, it is incredibly frustrating.
That encapsulates much of the betrayal that the working class in the United States had felt. But we have also come a long way since then, and we have a long way to go. The United States right now is experiencing a political pendulum, and depending, really, the party that is seen most as betraying the working class tends to be the governing party in this moment. Right now, that happens to be the Republican majority. But really, what we are seeing over the last 8 years, I think, has been a growing recognition that of those past errors that go back, that include military interventionism in the Iraq War, that include a recognition of NAFTA as a failed policy for many rural and working class communities. And now I think we are moving in this direction of increased recognition that we have to have a working class centered politics if we are going to succeed, and also if we are going to stave off the scourges of authoritarianism, which also provides political siren calls.
Remind me again, who is AOC speaking to here? AOC is at a Munich-based security conference so essentially she's overseas representing the United States in some of these talks, not necessarily representing the United States formally, but it's an uncharacteristic move for her to go overseas and talk to essentially many of the leadership of, various European countries and militaries, etc. And so that's pretty important, especially considering she may in fact be prepping for a run for president.
To allure people into finding scapegoats to blame for rising economic inequality, both domestically and globally.
So when you run for president, are you going to impose a wealth tax or a billionaire's tax?
I don't think that I don't think that anyone, and that we don't have to wait for any one president to impose a wealth tax. I think that it needs to be done expeditiously.
And
notice that she stumbled a little bit because she clearly wasn't expecting that, and didn't say that she wouldn't be running anytime soon. Didn't indicate anything. It's a very telling kind of non-answer. But it is a non-answer that also makes it very clear we should have a wealth tax now.
interestingly, when I wrote about wealth tax recently, and of course the big argument against this is always capital flight, the US is actually uniquely placed to do it because you guys tax on the basis of citizenship, so people can't flee, you know? And even if you change your citizenship, there's basically an exit tax because you have to pay a tax on unrealized capital gains. I learned this just recently. Manfred Weber, you are the president of the European People's Party, which is a group of conservative Christian democratic parties in the European Parliament, not far-right parties.
She was a big flop? A big flop in what sense? She's actually coming across as incredibly knowledgeable at this point.
But you have recently been voting occasionally with the far-right parties, breaching the famous firewall. Do you agree with J.D. Vance, who spoke here 1 year ago and told us all that this firewall is undemocratic? And if so, do you think that your party in Germany should actually be in coalition with the AfD instead of the Social Democrats?
Well, having J.D. Vance's speech of last year in mind, I 100% disagree with what he said there. And my party, the European People's Party, is the party of Schuman, of Adenauer, of de Gasperi, of those who founded the European Union. Afterwards, people like Václav Havel, of also Walesa from Poland, you know. So after the reunification, that is in a way the heritage of us as European People's Party. And to mention AfD in Germany, to mention nationalists in other countries, you know, that is totally the opposite what we stand for. My party, my predecessor as EPP party president is Donald Tusk in Poland, you know. He is fighting hard every day against Kaczynski, against Konfederacja, there to keep Poland in Europe and to be part of this European family. So that's our DNA. There's a clear red line. And I personally have defined it. For us, there is no cooperation possible with parties who do not follow the three pros, so pro-Europe, pro-Ukraine, pro-rule of law. Three key basic aspects which defines our DNA as EPP. But let me also be very clear when it is about the fight against populism. You mentioned a voice expressing the disappointment, the frustration, the concerns, the fears of citizens of this European Union. The basic thing is to win against populism is to give proper answer on their concerns and to take it seriously.
To give a little bit of context, this guy basically represents one of the large pro-EU conservative parties. He essentially is if the United States still had like an actual like conservative but still believes in liberal democracy type of party, that would be his political alliance.
And this week in the European Parliament we voted on a safe third country concept. So to make our external borders against illegal migration, against the fight against the mafia there in the Mediterranean Sea, to make our borders to protect them, And the socialists...
Yeah, the 80s Republican of Europe. Yeah, that an excellent way of putting it, Uncle Simric.
Remember everyone, populism isn't an ideology, it's a rhetorical style. It pits the elites versus the common folk. The key difference between left and right is who the elites are and how we fight.
True, Pluvius, and thank you for the $5 dono, very much appreciated.
Not capable, so center-left in Europe were not supporting this strict implementation of rules agreed by the overwhelming number of member states in the European Union, proposed by the Commission. So I don't speak about radical right extreme positions. I speak about the proposals from the European Commission, and their socialists were not ready to support this. So what can I say? I cannot continue to follow a quiet.
I don't know how any leftist can get elected without some internal shit-talking of turncoats like Fetterman, Schumer, and Jeffries.
I mean, I agree. And Sake Tanuki, thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs. I think that there is a healthy degree of internalized shit-talking that we all need to be comfortable with, you know? Like, liberals are going to shit-talk any kind of left-wing candidate, and us on the left, we're going to shit-talk Chuck Schumer until he resigns. You know, like, that's just kind of how it be. But what is important to understand about this guy is that he's essentially trying to draw a line. That red line he's talking about, he's trying to say, we're not like those explicitly fascist guys over there. We just believe in corporate profits. And like, that's essentially his role here is to be like, we're not like those fascists. We believe in serving corporations ethically and, you know, not too much. Like, that's essentially his whole deal.
Left-leaning political approach on migration, which is obviously European-wide, feeding extremism.
What is the difference between liberals and leftists? I would say that the big difference is liberals believe in capitalism. Leftists, by and large, recognize that the failures of capitalism are, at the very least, severe at the current point in time, and we need to have significant change. I would say that, you know, in my mind, a leftist would be someone who rejects capitalism as like an organizing principle of an economy. But I recognize that other people might have a larger definition. And not a troll question at all. Genuinely great question. I also think that there is a tendency to use the left as like a catch-all for like liberal and anything else to the left of that, to essentially talk about how talk about getting involved in elections, etc. So hopefully that helps to clarify.
Populism. That's why the basic thing is to answer the concerns and to give.
Yeah, like some leftists want capitalism with regulation, oversight, good safety net, etc. Kind of like a New Deal 2 type situation, or like a Nordic capitalism type situation. But increasingly, folks are wanting a little bit more pro-worker than they are pro-capital.
Proper, serious, center-based answers.
What would you say to Guido when he says, look, the AfD is now the second largest party in Germany. In some ways, it's more aligned in some of its policies, particularly on immigration, which is why your bloc has voted with them on occasion, than the SPD, which is only on 16%. When he says you are ostracizing a significant part of the electorate by basically ruling out a coalition government with them, do you stick by that firewall, or do you think that actually in the foreseeable future, where the AfD is now, it will enter government sooner or later?
Again, firewall is there and exists. I personally,
the firewall that he's is describing, I want to really. If you believe you can maintain an ideological divide between a center conservative party and a fascist party that is on the rise, understand that you are woefully unequipped for the moment. Largely because if you believe that there is an ideological line that keeps you safe, that ideological line can be penetrated by money, by capital, by the very people who fuel the rise of these deeply far-right movements like AfD, right? Like, that's actually a huge problem, and the central problem for why I tend to believe that, like, regulations on capital are ultimately defeatable by capital. You know, capital just breaks the law, and consequences be damned, they just become another cost of doing business. Oh, you broke the law and you have to pay a fine? Well, that it's totally fine to pay that fine because you made, had $2 billion in profit. Sure, you'll pay $100 million as a settlement, but you made $2 billion, so it's a drop in the bucket. And then you just keep buying those political favors. Become too big to fail. The government will even bail you out.
As EVP group leader kicked out Viktor Orban of my party because enough was enough. And today Viktor Orban is far away from any kind of common sense on this. He's campaigning against the support for Ukraine. So he's far away from this. That's why our firewall is clear. We don't need any feedback on this. The key aspect is that we have to solve problems. Otherwise, the next European elections in 2029 will be a big festival for the right extreme. And that is to be avoided. So economic strengths, lowering a bureaucratic burden, creating single markets, trade.
For another reminder that the biggest tool in our arsenal is the primary right now. Also, the fascists are deleting people from voter rolls for hating ICE. Make sure you're still registered.
Excellent advice, Red Rudy. Do make sure you are still registered to vote. We're going to be talking about either today or tomorrow. We've been talking about Donald Trump trying to make it harder to register to vote and some of the ways that they're trying to make it harder to vote. But yes, do check and make sure you are registered, and make sure you check, especially again when you're like a week out from voting, just to make sure you're all set to go. And hey, get registered to vote in the primaries. Absolutely.
Mercosur. These are the aspects to have economic growth. And my main question to Guido would be, do you really believe this bullshit the AfD is telling you? Do you really believe this? That without Mercosur we should have in Germany, with your working place as an industrial country who is benefiting much from export.
But the issue is, people who support the AfD, they don't watch this, man. They aren't watching you using swear words at the Munich conference. They don't give a shit. It's all vibes. To fascists, everything is vibes. It doesn't matter if the economy is better or worse. If the vibes are good in their little fascist bubble, they will say the prices are down even if the prices are up. We got plenty of conservatives popping into chat making that exact claim right now of like, well, I'm saving money on gas. Even if that's true, are you saving money overall? Because you're losing money on groceries. Like, goddamn. You think, you think that 10 cents of gas at the pump per gallon is going to outweigh the tariff cost? That is a unilateral tax on the entirety of the American people? Like, get your head out of your ass. But it's all vibes to them. It doesn't matter what the truth is.
If the AfD becomes the largest party, are they still the Alternative für Deutschland? Or are they the norm at that point? THONKERS.
Indeed, Sake Tanuki. Do they just become, I don't know, something else? Do they have to rename themselves? Like I don't know. I'm struggling to come up with other names for an ascendant fascist party in Germany. Who can say what it might be? Nazi 2. Like what do you go at that point? God.
Do you really believe that without Mercosur we have better economic situation for you personally? Or on migration?
Well, and Lady Ringcloud, I do think sometimes debate against fascists can be worthwhile if you clown on their vibes. If you clown on their vibes and ruin the vibes for their fascist audience, that I think can be effective. It's just a very different type of confrontation. It's not based on facts whatsoever. You know?
Nazi 2. Electric Boogaloo.
Sake Tanuki, thank you for the 2 tier 1 subs. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the booger in there. That really made me happy.
Have a look. We reduced now the number of illegal migrations by 80% together with Giorgia Meloni in the Mediterranean. I was also in contact with her and we delivered on this. So please see, if you vote for the right, center-right people, we solve your problems. That would be my message to Guido.
Mercosur is a good segue to Latin America.
Yeah, like if Nick Fuentes, exactly, just to be here, if Nick Fuentes was watching this, he'd be like, lame, boring. Let's get some more Catboys on here instead. I want to go on more dates. Girls are gay. Like, and then a bunch of slurs.
Diana Fernandez Molero, you are not a member of Javier Milei's party, but your party supports him, you support him. I always found it quite confusing that, you know, the sort of, there's a groundswell of anti-elitist voters who vote.
God, I forgot.
You're right. I'm saving tons of money on gas, but that's not because the price is down. It's because everything is so expensive that I can't go anywhere or do anything.
True. I've been cooped up here in Minneapolis because it's not safe to go anywhere with ice. Unfortunately. Pluvius, thank you for the $5 dono. It's unfortunately well observed. I forgot that this panel has a lady who is in favor of sane washing Javier Milei, which is wild as hell. It's wild to see someone trying to do that on an international stage, but it is funny.
Into power people who then end up being very rich and mingle with the elites, like, you know, Trump and the sort of tech broligarchy is a good example. It's confusing in a way. Milei has a slightly different approach, and I would love to hear from you what anarcho-capitalism, which is sort of his slogan, what that stands for, the kind of capitalism he's going for. Because on the face of it, superficially, it's a little bit reminiscent of Musk and Doge, you know, the chainsaw. So what does it mean?
Oh,
and how do you
Mithril.
how do you serve the people with the market?
Well, it's an interesting question what you made, because that's exactly many times Milei got confused, no? Because anarcho-capitalism has nothing to do with what is going on in Argentina.
Oh yeah. Our president is just really confused. Is that what you call someone who's doing like daily dog ghost seances? Is that he's just confused? Is that what you call someone who thinks he and his cloned dog are reincarnated spirits from the Roman Colosseum? Daily what? Yeah, no, I've talked about this before. Javier Milei is just fucking cracked, man. His brain is just gone. He literally consults his dogs like every day and has like a spiritual medium do a seance to connect him with the spirit of his dead dog that he believes lives on in the form of his of its offspring. He had his dog cloned as well. Who? Javier Milei. He does also treat his sister as the first lady of Argentina.
We are having a capitalism of rules, because what we had before wasn't capitalism.
He was just confused. Just 1 second.
You need a special kind of brain damage to believe in anarcho-capitalism.
It's true, Sake. I've literally debated anarcho-capitalists on the show back in the before times when I still did that. And their ideology falls apart pretty quickly. Javier Milei had a campaign ad where he dressed up as an anarcho-capitalist superhero. Also, it's worth noting that he didn't just dress up as a superhero for that ad.
Hola, soy el general.
He was literally known
de Liberland, una tierra creada por el principio de apropiación originaria del hombre. Una tierra de 7 kilómetros cuadrados entre Croacia y Serbia. Un país donde no se pagan impuestos. Un país donde se defienden las libertades individuales. Donde se cree en el individuo, ¿sí? Y no hay lugar para colectivistas hijos de puta que no quieren cagar la vida. Así que mi misión es cagar a patadas en el culo a keynesianos y colectivistas hijos de puta que no quieren cagar la vida. Vamos por una sociedad libre, vamos por el orden espontáneo, vamos por los valores de la libertad. ¡Viva la libertad, carajo! ¡Viva la libertad!
Like, he's not confused. Like, he knows exactly what he's doing. This is an official Twitter account from him. This is the pinned post on his Twitter account from just last month.
Hello, freedom fighters of the world. I'm General ANCAP.
God, I hate it.
Definitely not Malay. I'm here to guide you in the official English account of our real-life hero, Javier Milei.
Ministerio de las Mujeres, Género y Diversidad, afuera. Ministerio de Obras Públicas, afuera. Ministerio de Educación, adoctrinamiento, afuera.
The past year was big for Milei, who's becoming a heavyweight as a world influencer.
Make Argentina great again. Viva la libertad, carajo!
With his unique brand of epic, rockstar, aggressive libertarianism. Here you will find everything about him. His story, his ideas, and his latest news. I leave you now with Javier Milei.
No tengan miedo. Vayan y den la batalla contra el zurderío, que se la vamos a ganar. Zurdos, hijos de puta, tiemblen. La libertad avanza. ¡Viva la libertad, carajo! ¡Vamos!
Viva la libertad, carajo.
Yeah, I found it, by the way. I found the actual ad that I was looking for. So, get ready for this. You are not prepared.
El Banco Central está haciendo de las suyas de nuevo. Creo que es hora de cerrar. De una buena vez.
He's just confused, guys.
Destrucción, 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 destrucción. ¡Basta inflación!
Like, I don't know. He's just confused though. Just a silly little Billy, I guess.
Was crony capitalism, and that's a very, very important.
Oh, the problem is crony capitalism.
The three biggest flaws of ANCAP are that the market doesn't have infinite choices for the consumer, the consumers don't have all info to make informed choices, and it assumes humans are all rational actors.
I mean, true. And also, it assumes that the market would want to provide for everyone equally, which is not how markets work. You know? Like, if you're in the housing biz, you're not necessarily in the business of housing everybody. You're in the business of housing people who can make you a profit. You know? But thank you for the $20 super chat, Red Rudy. I very much appreciate it. Thank you so goddamn much for supporting the show. Sake Tanuki.
Milei is what happens when Gollum and Sam don't assist Frodo with getting the ring into Mount Doom.
His little gleeful smile when he looks up after opening the fucking case with the hammer gets me every time. But guys, it's crony capitalism that's the problem. It's crony capitalism. And surely Javier Milei would not engage in any kind of crony capitalist endeavors. Surely not.
Thing. So what we are trying to do, the government and the ones that support these reforms, are creating a capitalism for the people. And that's the opposite of anarchy. It's capitalism of rules, but rules that benefit the people. And let me be precise about it.
Anarchy is not when no rules. Just as an FYI, that's not what anarchy means.
You have like populism that can be economic populism or political populism, Dornbusch or Mueller, basically. So if you go to economic populism, you have the recipe that many Latin American countries applied many times. That is, short-term things that gives some relief in the short term.
Also, just as an FYI, El Ciudadano reports that in 2025, Milei's economic moves lost over 290,000 jobs from Argentina's job market.
But end up being...
Oh, and 22,000 employers, if you only care about employers, I guess.
You know, a tragedy for the future. It's like public expenditure, huge public expenditure, price control, sometimes wealth tax, and you end up, if the wealth goes away and you have just the tax and you don't...
Yeah, man, because like that's, countries will just tax someone and then have no way of making sure that they pay their taxes. You're so... Yeah, if somebody owes taxes, they'll just leave the country, which is why so many billionaires left New York after Mamdani won. Oh wait, no, none of them left? Oh, that's crazy. You mean it was all bullshit? That all of this, oh, they'll run away? It was all bullshit the entire time? What's that? That we've had studies showing it was bullshit the entire time? Going back like 40 years? Oh, that's wild. That's crazy. Is this a socialist channel? Yes, it is.
And you don't have wealth anymore. That was something that Peronism did many, many times. So all these recipes then creates a cycle, no? Then you have this short-term relief, but then goes with inflation, shortage, then you have more poverty, and this and the cycle goes and goes. Then you have political populism, and that's different. That's a threat to democracy many times, because it's when you deny pluralism, when you say, okay, the popolo del pueblo, the people against the others, the enemies of the people, and you also erode key...
I mean, capitalism inherently creates that relationship by viewing the people as essentially cogs in your corporate machine, right? Like capitalism breaks society down into forcing the perspective of people as either labor or consumer, and nothing else. It is purely a form of wealth extraction either way, right? Like, in that framework, if you are either a consumer or merely labor, in both cases you're being taken advantage of in some way, and that inherently builds up a us versus them mentality, my argument anyway.
Institutions for democracy, free press, freedom of speech, court, judicial system, etc. But I think that Milei is none of them. Maybe you cannot like his forms, his style, but it's very important when we discuss populism to distinguish in between style and substance. And I think that maybe the style is uncomfortable, but it doesn't make you a populist.
So when you say rules-based capitalism, I actually studied...
Oblivious, thank you for being a member.
Economics a long time ago. The perfect market doesn't exist, of course, but the idea is that you create a competitive environment. You do not allow for the concentration of wealth, which means antitrust and things like that. Regulation is very important. Is that something that your government stands for?
That's exactly the reforms that the government is doing is exactly that. The free trade agreements, more competition. Argentina is one of the closest economies in the world. We need more competition. So I insist, capitalism is a bad word in Argentina, but what we had wasn't capitalism. It was capitalism for a few, for many that cannot compete with abroad, and so you can charge people extraordinary prices. A cell phone in Argentina was unaffordable. You have to go to the US to buy them. That's unfair for the people, and now people is seeing that it's working, because that's also interesting. That's why he got too much support from the people in the midterm election as well, after doing things that traditionally were not very popular. Any political advisor would have told you, said that you're going to reduce the budget and that you're going to cut a lot of things, but this end up working for the people. So that's interesting. Free trade agreements, more competition, antitrust, all these kind of things.
So maybe you should give some advice to the US becoming a more competitive economy.
We are signing a free trade agreement with them as well. So
that's true. Peter Pavel, you are the Czech president, but you also were a very senior NATO general, the most senior one that the Czech Republic ever had. I want to start by asking you about your part of Europe, the sort of former communist part of Europe, and it's notable that a lot of the populist parties have done quite well. That there seems to be a sort of groundswell of support in that part of Europe. Certainly in Germany, the east of Germany, the former communist east, is the kind of heartland of the AfD. Why is that? And do you think, as somebody who has actually experienced a change in system in 1989, do you think that maybe capitalism was nicer, kinder, when it was still competing with communism?
Well, I'm afraid I will not offer you a thorough analysis, just my perception. But I believe that a number of people in former communist countries believed that with the change of a system, they will achieve all the benefits of capitalism while keeping all the benefits of socialism. That means getting richer, having access to travel, study, work abroad, having nice cars, plenty of goods in the shops, but no responsibility. And that created a lot of frustration, because when people realize that not everyone will get rich, and there will always be people who will be better off, and those who will not necessarily suffer, but will have living conditions more difficult than the others, then that frustration, if it is not properly addressed, it creates a lot of tension and frustration. And that was easily taken forward by those who believed that feeding on frustration of people, offering them short and nice solutions that they could never deliver, because they were not in power. They usually were in opposition, and they were only feeding on these insecurities, pointing to those who allegedly were behind these problems. They mostly referred to the government, to institutions like courts, to media. And of course, a number of people were prone to believe that their misery is because of lack of support and attention of the elites. I think it's very simple.
It's weird how crony capitalism issue keeps cropping up.
Yeah, and I mean, my argument is that it's going to continue to keep popping up, right? Like, my argument is that capitalism inherently leans towards this as an inevitable outcome of its very own system. Like, ultimately, it doesn't need to be even like a nefarious like group of people. It's that rich people all tend to hang out with each other. Rich people all tend to, by virtue of hanging out with each other, do business with the people that they hang out with in their own social economic class. And then ultimately, like, they all know each other, and the system is designed to maximize extracted profit. And so over time,
Capitalism.
Exactly. Like, you got like the frat, like the entire reason guys join frats in elite schools is so that they have a ready social network they can call on in order to do business deals, in order to gain new executives for their company, in order to find venture capital, etc., etc., etc. And like, if you're not in that club, you're never going to get that call, right? And so it's that old George Carlin clip you're talking about. I'm not even talking about a George Carlin clip. I'm just explaining the system. I know which clip you're talking about. I was not referencing it. I was just trying to explain it. It's just that Carlin did a really good job explaining the system, right? And so my argument is that even if we got a New Deal 2, we would be in this exact same situation, 60 years from now. If we got a New Deal 2 tomorrow, 60 years from now, we'd be in the same spot, or our kids would be in the same spot. And it's deeply, deeply unfortunate. It's a big club and you ain't in it. Yeah. You bring it up. Yeah, exactly.
Similar to any other country where the populism is a problem. But in general, I don't think that we should give a populism a label of something bad, because it depends how we define populism. I know a number of politicians who are proud of being called populists, because they believe that listening to frustration and problems of the people, transferring them into policies is actually the very sense of and the meaning of politics. But the problem starts.
Jack, were you talking about Brett Kavanaugh? No, I'm talking about literally every rich asshole you know. Every rich asshole you are aware of. I'm describing 95% of them.
It's when this populism is turned against the institutions that are there to protect democracy.
I want to sort of do one more quick round of questions about what this means for foreign and security policy, since we are at the Munich Security Conference, but then I will throw it open to questions, so get your questions ready. And maybe I'll actually stay with you for a second. As you're with your head of former president of the military committee at NATO, very senior job, I wonder, are you worried about the fact that next year, Bardella might be the president of France. Maybe in 2029, Farage is the prime minister of the UK. And then the two nuclear powers in Europe are run by far-right, nationalist, populists, whatever you want to call them.
Well,
how is his head so square? I mean, his hair's doing a lot of work, but also, I think there might just be something about being in the military that makes your head square. I can't explain it. I don't know why. I don't know the science. But maybe that has something to do with it.
First, I think we have to respect the will of people. If we live in democracies, we have to understand that not always there will be parties that we like.
Blockhead, if you will.
But at the same time, the experience is that when these people who used to be for a long time in a position on the critical side, once they are put in a position where they have the responsibility to deliver, then they suddenly understand the complexity of a situation, and they change a lot of their, let's say, extreme positions that they held before. I believe that the best protection is to have a good set of checks and balances, to have some counterweight against potential extreme moves. Another layer of protection could be vibrant civil society that can also do an excellent job, because most of those populist politicians are very sensitive to.
Oh, Puller, that was good. The Eastern blockheads, indeed.
Public opinion.
It's an interesting point that you raised there, because it's sort of this idea of democratic resilience in a way, which in a way, if we think holistically about security, it's not just defense budgets, right? It's about people voting and people feeling safe, people feeling secure and happy and represented by their governments. And I wonder, to the extent that maybe this is something I can throw to you, Alexandria. Defense budgets have been rising everywhere. You guys have been spending a lot on defense for a long time, but a lot of governments now have very serious debt problems. And so there's a trade-off, right? I mean, if you spend more on defense, you spend less on other things. In France, for example, it's shocked to find out recently that the interest payment on debt annually is now bigger than the entire education sector. So
my brother was in the military, and I can confirm he is square forming. Skull emoji.
Oh no. The square maxers. We don't talk about square maxing. Thank you for the $5 super chat, AC Gods.
You have a situation where all budgets are going down, only defense is going up. And it does raise the question, should we not invest in democratic resilience by providing good public services and spending money on that in order to actually protect our democracies internally as well as externally?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, that is correct. 1000%. Yes. Like, the big threat that is posed right now by fascism is born exactly out of the deprivation and the choice made every single time the budget is up for consideration. This is why it always pissed me off when people were like, well, I'm socially liberal but fiscally conservative, because you cannot separate these two things. You cannot separate, like, slashing funding out of, like, normal politics. Like, you cannot do it. And this idea that you want lower taxes and that it has no other costs to it is just, it's just baloney. It's just absolutely malarkey. The idea here is that, like, well, we what? We cut all of our social programs to spend massively on our military. Well, I don't think that's quite the correct formulation, right? Because it's not necessarily we cut all of our social programs to fund our military, though that does happen to some extent. What it tends to be is we're going to cut all of our social programs and then give you tax breaks, give you, and by you, I mean the richest people on the planet, massive tax breaks. Essentially, shifting the tax burden from the wealthiest people in society to the poorest or to the weakest people in society, the people who are more subject to that exploitation. So I disagree with the framing of the question a little bit here, but also by transferring funding from social safety nets, for example, to the military, you're essentially giving a massive handout to military contractors and the private corporations that are downstream of the military, which is another handout to corporations, which I shouldn't have to point that out, but I guess I do. So a lot of this just keeps coming down to shifting money out of programs that help working class people and into programs that help the wealthiest people on the planet. And the priority, the question that is posed to us every single time there is an election, every single time there is a budget up for a vote, is which do you want to prioritize? Do you want to prioritize the wealth of the wealthiest people to ever exist? Or do you want to prioritize your child being able to learn how to read? Do you want to prioritize your ability to be able to put food in your belly and have a roof over your head? And yeah, I think that most people, when it is put in stark and simple and easily explicable terms, understand which choice they would make, and understand that if this is the choice being posed to us, who has a vested interest in making sure the money goes to the wealthiest people to ever exist? It's pretty easy to tell who's screwing us over. Where's all the money going? I don't know. Look at who has the most money. It's pretty... We don't have to look at who's doing it here. It's the guy in the hot dog costume.
That's absolutely right. You know, I think one of the connections and relationships that is under-discussed, particularly in the security space, is the fact that I believe we're seeing an economy, across economy around the world, including in the United States, that extreme levels of income inequality lead to social instability and drives, in a sense, in authoritarianism, right-wing populism, and
Yeah, exactly. The failures of neoliberalism lay the seeds and the groundwork for fascism, for this right-wing populism.
Very dangerous domestic internal politics. And that is a direct outcome of not just income inequality, but the failure of democracies over decades to deliver. The failure to deliver higher wages, the failure to rein in corporations. You know, the point was just made about antitrust. In the United States, antitrust is such a foundational bedrock value, not just because the ascent of monopolies create the abuse of power in corporations and market power, but there is a level of market concentration and corporate consolidation where a massive company can get so big that its consolidated power can rival that of nation states. In democracies, we have elected leaders, and in massive corporations that then begin to consume the public sector, gobble up the spending, they start to call the shots. And we're starting to see this with some of the billionaire class throwing their weight around in domestic politics and in global politics as well. So it is of utmost urgent priority that we get our economic houses in order and deliver material gains for the working class, or else we will fall to a more isolated world governed by authoritarians that also do not deliver to working people.
And, you know, it's interesting. So this idea of, you know, in Europe, we are now spending...
I mean, like, she's correct. And the thing about her entire appearance on this international stage, and it's through all of her appearances. I watched all of them today. And after we finish this, we'll have a little bit more. The reason I show all of this particular talk, or wanted to go through all of this, is because I think it's particularly of the moment, as it were. But what I'm really interested in here is AOC's responses, because she's very clearly staking out a left-wing position that is extremely far left compared to where most mainstream Democrats are here in America. And like, I'm not here to say like AOC is, you know, is going to be claiming the label of a communist anytime soon. But I do think that she's a significant step in a leftward direction, and her firming up these stances right now in the lead up to 2026, combined with her touring the country with Bernie, I think that this is laying the groundwork for a potential 2028 run. I think that this is her essentially dipping her toes into communicating internationally in a way that people are actually going to take note of, right? And so I think that she is being exceptionally diplomatic in her responses here, while still maintaining, you know, pro-working class positions, which is very important. Very, very important.
Need more in defense budgets, but, you know, like I said,
because if the question is, hey, who do you want to run in 2028? Right now, the list of candidates is exceptionally terrible. Like, you've got who? Kamala Harris again? Gavin Newsom? Pete Buttigieg again? Like, maybe JB Pritzker, but like, I don't see him really setting himself up for a run, you know. And maybe he will. Like Josh Shapiro, like, people don't like Josh. Andy Bashir, Gretchen Whitmer, no. Like, the only candidate that actually makes me feel like change in a positive direction would be possible is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and she happens to be the most favorable person currently rumored to be in the process of getting her shit together to run. So like, I'm kind of here like, this might be our best and only option in a crowded primary year. You know, it matters. It matters as we look ahead. But again, we are putting the cart before the horse, even talking about her running. Right now, it's fueled on a lot of speculation and her appearance and performance during this series of events.
There are these trade-offs. I mean, we are in a situation where the group of pro-Russian countries within the EU is actually, it's still very small, but it's potentially growing. I don't know, I'd be curious to know whether the Czech Republic is halfway there. Certainly Viktor Orban and Robert Fico. You know, is the EU, in that sense, in terms of its foreign and security policy, still an entity that we can even think about, Manfred? Like, what is the EU? And if Bardella and Farage, well, Farage is not inside the EU, but linked to it now in defense terms, possibly one day, a junior coalition party that is the AfD, what is that EU in terms of foreign and security policy? Does NATO still have a place in that case?
Well, first of all, about the role of the European Union. This week in Strasbourg in the European Parliament, we voted for the 90 billion euros for Ukraine. A clear message of full solidarity with the Ukrainian people. We stand on their side. We finance the pensions, we finance now the teachers, we finance the healthcare people. So that is what we are doing there. And I think that people know it. So that's what European Union together is doing. I would be happy if we would have used the frozen assets from the Russians to pay for this, but okay, now we are on a way at least to have the money provided. So clear message. But when we speak about populism in regard to the defense and security dimension, I think first step is to deliver on the main concern about just society, about economic growth, about migration, to have control about this. But the second thing of answering populism is to show brave leadership and not following always public opinion. You know, when the German Chancellor Kohl invented the euro to make Europe strong economically, one block, which is now is the second biggest currency in global level with the euro, it was not popular at all to give up on the German D-mark in Germany. Not at all. But he did it. He stood in front of people. And that were great times for my party, for CDU-CSU. Because people saw leaders who were convinced about an idea and fought for it and didn't give up the public discourse space.
Also, I want to point out how absurd it is that the German moderate conservative party can have a representative here who's basically politicians need to fight for their ideas. They need to go out and convince people why their ideas are good and should be enacted. Yeah. Meanwhile, you've got Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer over here being like, well, it's not our job to make things popular. It's the activists' job. You've got Matthew Iglesias posting on social media about how it's it's not the politicians' job to lead. They're supposed to just respond to how things are. It's terminally brain rotted. Just absolutely devoid of any actual ideological spine.
For the populism, they dominated the discourse with their ideas for the future. And that is what we are probably lacking today. That's why I'm so ambitious to say I would love to have one president of the European Union, probably directly elected by the people of Europe on the long run. Why not? To have one person capable to be on the same level as Trump and Xi. And
opinions on Pritzker? Pritzker seems fine. I wouldn't be incensed by the election of JV Pritzker like I would with the election of basically any of the other candidates that I listed outside of AOC. But Pritzker's a distant second.
And Putin. And the second idea, I am in favor of really unifying our defense pillars in the European Union. On the long run, also a European army, where I would say we are spending so much money now, 6.5 trillion euros.
Who's the blonde woman in white? She's there to represent Javier Milei in Argentina, the ANCAP dipshit.
In the next 10 years for defense, but we have not the same capabilities than the Americans have. And that's why I know it's a long project, but again, Euro, or 7 years after the Second World War, when Adenauer said we have to make peace with France, it was also mission impossible 7 years after the horrible war of the Second World War. So we have to be ambitious again. And that are the two pillars of fight against populism, delivering on content about the concerns, but also showing brave leadership in historic moments.
I hope we can go deeper in that actually in the Q&A. I'm going to ask one final question, Diana, and then throw it open to you guys. Because I'm curious, we're talking about foreign policy here, and foreign policy of populist presidents, for example. Looking at the pivot of President Trump to the Western Hemisphere, which has been very aggressive to say the least. Argentina has been a beneficiary, of course.
Okay, I am going to, in the interest of time, jump forward here.
Answers.
I'm Ava Federley from New York City, Straight Arrow News. Congresswoman, they're saying that there's more American delegates here than there have ever been at the Munich Security Conference. Why do you think it's important that you're here, against the wrecking ball politics of Trump? But, why is it important that you're here representing the U.S.?
Also, I'm so glad you made it. Who paid for your flight?
We did.
Should we just you start, and then we just take a quick fire round of answers?
Sure. I'll start last to first. I think this is a moment where we are seeing our presidential administration tear apart the transatlantic partnership, rip up every democratic norm, and really calling into question, as was mentioned by David Carney at the World Economic Forum, the rules-based order that we have, or question mark, do we have? And so I think one of the reasons why, not just myself, but many of our colleagues here, in fact, many Democrats that are here as well, is because we want to tell a larger story, that what is happening is indeed very grave. And we are in a new era, domestically and globally. There have been many leaders who've said we will go back. And I think we have to recognize that we are in a new day and in a new time. But that does not mean that the majority of Americans are ready to walk away from a rules-based order, and that we're ready to walk away from our commitment to democracy. I think what we identify is that in a rules-based order, hypocrisy is vulnerability. And so I think what we are seeking is a return to a rules-based order that eliminates the hypocrisies around when too often in the West we look the other way for inconvenient populations to act out these paradoxes.
I will say that in any effort to return to any kind of rules-based international order where hypocrisy is actually a check is necessarily contingent on reining in AI, putting a stop to the corruption of our information ecosystem that is being perpetrated on a mass and unprecedented scale by AI chatbots and AI agents. It is not possible for us to restore that previous system where hypocrisy actually mattered and could get people out of politics completely, unless we also rein in AI and its abuses. Frankly, we gotta do that as any part of any larger scale attempt to reform.
Whether it is, kidnapping a foreign head of state, whether it is threatening our allies to colonize Greenland, whether it is looking the other way in a genocide. Hypocrisies are vulnerabilities, and they threaten democracies globally. And
I do think that her saying stuff like this matters, in part because she is, albeit indirectly, calling out the Democratic Party, calling out the powers that be in the Democratic Party, calling out the Chuck Schumers, the Hakeem Jeffries, etc. Granted, she's not taking full aim at them yet, but this is definitely a shot across the bow. I would characterize that as a shot across the bow.
So I think many of us are here to say we are here and we are ready for the next chapter, not to have the world turn to isolation, but to deepen our partnership on greater and increased commitment to integrity to our values.
Just a 20-second follow-up, really, just quick. Are there any particular institutions that a democratic administration would want to save? Like your voters?
She's also calling out the support of Israel and its genocide. Yes, that's why she said that specifically to call out the Democratic Party's complicity with the genocide in Gaza.
NATO? Is it the climate accord? Is it the Iran nuclear? Are there some things where, just give me a lily pad?
Well, you know, first and foremost, I think we need to revisit our commitments to international aid, not just USAID, but the dozens of global compacts that this current Secretary of State...
You are saying the opposite of what I read of this. I heard it was a joke.
Yeah, and chicken on biscuits, like, the reporting on this has been terrible. Like, I want to give an example of just what I saw that was, like, just almost just absolutely incredible, right? So we've watched this. Let's take a look here. So this is from 16 hours ago at the New York Times. Let's see if they kept it in. Yeah, this quote. I think that this is such a I think that this is of course a very long-standing policy of the United States, Ms. Ocasio-Cortez said before saying that the country should try to avoid reaching that point with China in the first place. And like, yeah, if you quote her as saying that, which is, I think, a very unfair characterization of her general speech throughout several hours of media appearances. And then you compare how the New York Times reports on how Donald Trump speaks in public. I don't know. I think there might be a bit of a double standard going on here. The New York Times reveals its biases in its method of quotation. You know? Yeah. Did they quote Biden like that? Did they quote Trump like that at any point? Like, I mean, God, I have prepped here a segment on Donald Trump, and I just want to read one of his tweets to you. This is not even like a quote from Donald Trump speaking. This is just a quote from his social media page. The Democrats refuse to vote for voter ID or citizenship. The reason is very simple. They want to continue to cheat in elections. This was not what our founders desired. I have searched the depths of legal arguments not yet articulated or vetted on this subject, and will be presenting an irrefutable one in the very near future. There will be voter ID for the midterm elections, whether approved by Congress or not. Also, the people of our country are insisting on citizenship with no mail-in ballots, and with exception for military, disability, illness, or travel. Thank you for your attention to this matter. President Donald J. Trump. And like, I'm sorry, if you actually quote that entire post, it looks like it was written by a goddamn lunatic, okay? Like, just absolutely insane. Here's just another, just like, here's 30 seconds of him talking.
And you have confirmation U.S. citizenship. That's about a 99% one with Republicans, about 86% with Democrats, except Democrat politicians because they cheat on elections. And then you have no mail-in ballots. And there would be no mail-in ballots, very important. You know, we're the only country in the world that does a system like we do. We're the only country in the world that has mail-in ballots. The way we do this is unbelievable. It guarantees cheating. So it's no, and you have confirmation.
To fight from either extreme left or extreme right, freaking America needs some darn middle ground. We are divided and conquered. Vote how you like and STFU, amen.
I wish I could shut the fuck up, but I've got armed men in masks on the street abducting my neighbors and shooting them in the face. So until that stops happening, I encourage you to shut the fuck up and do something productive that helps your neighbors. But thank you for the $10 super chat.
And President Trump have withdrawn from. They are looking to withdraw the United States from the entire world so that we can turn into an age of authoritarians that can carve out the world where Donald Trump can command the Western Hemisphere and Latin America as his personal sandbox, where Putin can saber rattle around Europe and try to bully around our own allies there, and for essentially authoritarians to have their own geographic domains. And it actually is the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It is our global alliances that can be a hard stop against authoritarian consolidation of power, particularly in the installation of regional puppet governments.
Amazing. Manfred, should we just take it this way and then you...
And I mean, like, yeah, she's nailing it. She's nailing it in this appearance. Like, I'm sorry. The characterization of her as, like, inarticulate or stupid, it's just not accurate to her actual performance here. She's an idiot. What about what she said right there struck you as the ravings of an idiot? Because frankly, all I've seen is nitpicking of the fact that she used filler words when getting an unexpected question. And that's about it. Do you think AOC is the best candidate for 2028? She might be the best one that we're gonna get. Just looking at the list of people who might throw their hats into the ring, you know, the most powerful one probably being either Kamala Harris or Gavin Newsom. She's one of the few Democratic politicians outside of like Bernie Sanders who has a higher degree of favorability within the Democratic Party. But let's take a look. I wanted to check in with this appearance, which she made at TU Berlin a few days ago as part of her Munich security conference appearance. And I think she laid out, at least early on here, a very good preview of what a type of candidacy from her would look like.
That unapologetic visibility of Latin culture in this moment.
Yes, you know, it is. It's so interesting, and it is so impactful that this halftime show felt so resonant for so many people, because
she got asked about Bad Bunny's performance.
As in this moment and in the political environment and conditions that we're in, where cruelty has become in vogue and inhumanity and callousness is seen as this kind of sophisticated, realpolitik kind of approach to the world. A halftime show based not just in proudly centering Latin Americans and immigrants of all kinds in the United States who are under attack, but also Latin American culture is so communal and it is so warm and compassionate, like many other cultures around the world, that just centering kindness and, you know, in Spanish there's a word cariño. And this is like this, cariño is like this, I don't know how you would translate it, but it's
like warmth.
It's like a cherishing of one another.
Bad Bunny was an awful show. I mean, I guess if you're like media illiterate, I suppose.
And that just putting those values on television felt countercultural, rebellious, resistant, and that I think speaks so much to the moment that we are in, that it was defiant. And I think mainstreaming that is so important, even though it may seem like something we would have taken perhaps for granted just a few short years ago.
It was crap. My opinion, get over it. It's fine. You're entitled to your opinion, but like, why did you think it was crap? I mean, I'm interested. I'm not angry about it, but I am interested. Why did you dislike it? I've heard a lot of people disliked it, but I haven't really heard many reasons why other than it was in Spanish, which I think is a not great reason to dislike something. Kind of like how Parasite was not in English, but it still slapped as a film.
Qué orgullo. But we will switch to English, no worries. So let me move along in your biography, maybe ask you a few questions. You studied international relations and economics at Boston University, interned for Senator Ted Kennedy at some point, and after graduation you returned home to help out your family after your father had passed away. You had to take odd jobs, you had to be a waitress and supporting your family. So you at that time already got involved in the organizing and politics, but when was the moment where you actually realized, okay, I don't want to just look at politics. I actually want to do something.
Yes, you know, I think that whole...
Oh, no, Princess Mouse, over it on the YouTube stream, we get a lot of trolls. So, you know, every night it's basically an unending deluge of people telling me I look like a man, or I'm ugly, or, you know, something about like, transes need to get out of America, stuff like that. You know, a general milieu of hatred that existing as a trans woman out on the internet and a socialist just kind of attracts. You know, the low-hanging hatred fruit of internet trolls.
Journey was so formative to my life and to my experience. My mother was born in Puerto Rico. My father was born in the Bronx, in New York. And I grew up at a time when the Bronx was experiencing some of the highest dropout rates, high school dropout rates in its history. And my parents moved to a suburb to try to move me to a public school area where I could have a chance. And I think, you know, so much of this was built on the promise of the American dream, that if you work hard, and even if you are born or come from economically challenging circumstances.
I'm sorry, if you think that Bad Bunny's halftime show was too sexually explicit, I encourage you to go look over the lyrics of literally every other performer at the Super Bowl for like the last 30 years.
That you can be entrepreneurial, that you can work hard. My mother cleaned houses growing up to put me through school. My father started a small business, and we struggled, but we were starting to make it. They were able to finally buy a home, which is part of the white picket fence American dream. And around the time I was 16 years old, my father was diagnosed with cancer. Of course, in the United States, healthcare is not treated as a human right. It is not universal. And so we suffered greatly financially through his chemotherapy treatments. And I got into college and I started studying in school. And the first week of my sophomore year of college, my father passed away. And my mother was left to be a single mom and trying to support 2 children on a house cleaner's salary. And I really saw and lived the same story that so many Americans can have, where it's that you are promised this American dream, you do everything right. My parents came here, they tried to raise 2 kids, put them through college, get an education, and it all fell apart. And this was all during the 2008 recession. And so after I graduated college, we were by that time on the brink of losing our home, and I started waitressing because it was in the wake of the Great Recession. There was no jobs available, and it's how you could walk home with cash in your pocket. I felt very cynical about our politics.
And I mean, like, I think that this is an origin story that, like, a lot of working people in America can get behind and understand.
Especially about the 2-party system in the United States, because the Bush tax cuts were made permanent under a Democratic administration. They were made by a Republican administration, made permanent during a Democratic administration. You grow up with this background. We had the Iraq War, and it felt just very much, you started to see the same banks and the same large corporations contributing to both political parties at this time. And I grew very cynical. I felt, what is the point in electoral politics? It feels like no one is fighting for me. And it feels like, more importantly,
it's true. Obama did betray us. I have another entire segment talking extensively about how Obama betrayed us, prepared to go right now. But I don't think this is an Obama situation.
Politics had really drifted away from seeing families like mine. And there was a time when I gave up on it. I was very cynical, and I just said, you know what, I'm just going to put down my head and I'm just going to work and just accept these conditions. And when you do that, life gets very depressing. It's very dispiriting when you give into that. And I think it just kind of got to a point where it was just intolerable. And I thought, you know what? Even if it is impossible to change this Herculean system, I will feel better about my life having tried. And so I first started really engaging in activist and advocacy communities. I went to Standing Rock to resist the Keystone XL pipeline at that time. I got involved with many other activist movements. I still thought there was no way I would ever be able to get elected to office. And then, you know, the opportunity arose where I looked at my own backyard and I saw that our elected representative, I looked him up in one day and I said, I've never seen this person in my life. And I kind of felt to myself, there hadn't been a primary election. He had kind of been named to the seat. And I said, I might as well run. And I think it was that switch that was important. It's less the decision to run for political office that was important to me. I think the most consequential decision.
I dipped into the rightosphere, and AOC apparently doesn't know geography. Meanwhile, conservatives struggling to find Agrabah on a map.
Is resisting cynicism. Having gone there, visited it, and then made the active decision that it is no way to live a life. And I think that is the thing and that is the stuff that successful political movements are really made of.
Yeah. Like I said, we have over 1,000 students here tonight, many of whom I'm sure care deeply about the state of the world and our politics, but maybe also feel overwhelmed or powerless or even cynical sometimes. So what is
there a video of that? There's not a video, but here is a poll from like 11 years ago. 30% of GOP voters support bombing Agrabah, the city from Aladdin. So that's fun. It's really fun to see that conservatives are only now really caring about geography, apparently.
Your advice to young people who are politically engaged but don't know how to take the next step or want to actually begin?
By the way, not just like, oh, they support, sanctions on Agrabah or can't locate Agrabah. They genuinely just sight unseen are like, should we bomb Agrabah? Yeah, we should kill the people in Agrabah. And it's like, girl, you know little about the situation that you are in favor of violently killing fictional people from a fictional place just to sate your bloodlust and hatred of Muslims. It's crazy.
Getting involved into politics.
I think one of the things that can't be underestimated is the power that young people and particularly students have. It can be an overwhelming time.
God, I do really, really wish that reporters in the White House press pool would just start asking Trump basic follow-up questions. Like, I have here a map of North and South America. Can you please identify for me where Venezuela is? Like, just some basic questions. I feel like it could genuinely be the thing that obliterates him in politics. I just want some like basic, assume he genuinely knows nothing and work from there.
And that is by design. The right wing in the United States, they call this the flood the zone strategy. And that is if your senses can be overwhelmed, if you can be brought to a place of paralysis with new news developments every day, that you will say, there's so much to do, I don't know what I can do, I'm just one person, so I'm just not going to do anything. And that is how, that's how they try to operate. That is their strategy for power. And the one thing that I can't emphasize enough is that there genuinely is no action too small. There is no organizing too insignificant, and all too often people dismiss the smallest actions before they even start because they're too small.
And this is one of the reasons why I try and encourage you guys, however you can, to get politically active. Because even if it's just putting up some signs, even if it's just, you know, walking around and like posting stickers in various places around your neighborhood, like that does something, you know, like even if it's just getting one more person to go to DSA, even if it's just getting one more person to go to your local Democratic meeting, you know, that does something. It's important because you are not alone. There are tens of millions of people working in concert with you. Sake Tanuki, thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs. What is this?
Very disappointed in the fact that that one's not settled. To think that we settled Azerbaijan and Albania as an example.
No.
It was going on for years. It was never going to be settled. If you remember, the Prime Minister and the presidents, they were there for many years. They said, when they were in my office, we settled. And they started off at both sides of the Oval Office, so far away. I didn't know you could be so far away. And as we were together for an hour, they kept getting closer, closer. And by the time we finished, we all hugged each other. And one said, I've been in this position for 22 years, and all I've done is kill their people. The other was there for 7 years, and all he did was kill their people. And we got it settled. And we did others, as you know. Very disappointed in the fact that that one's not settled. To think that we settled Azerbaijan.
I wanted to hear it one more time. That's very funny. But yeah, like, I don't know, people shit on AOC for, like, misspeaking once out of... Like, this that we're watching right now is almost 2 hours long. And, like, the press will hyper-focus on the part where she had a few too many ums. But, like, Donald Trump, the leader of the United States, not being able to pronounce the names of countries and not knowing which countries he's talking about, that's no biggie. That's fine. We'll barely talk about it.
And when I think about some of the formative moments that led up to an ascendant progressive left in the United States, they were things that people dismissed.
Yeah, he was talking about Azerbaijan and Armenia, but Azerbaijan and Albania. Like, god damn.
The Occupy Wall Street movement began as a collective of students, and it grew. And in the moment, even when it was disrupted and dismantled, it created a cultural moment that captured the attention of millions of people. And in that immediate moment, people would have said, well, it didn't accomplish anything, it wasn't successful, but it really planted the seeds that then rolled into a lot of the energy just a few short years later of Bernie Sanders' first presidential campaign, of which I got, you know, I kind of cut my teeth doing electoral organizing. And so I would say that no action is too small and too insignificant. We are all drops that, when put together, make an ocean, but we don't see the ocean at the start. So I would really say that having faith in your convictions and your smallest decisions genuinely, genuinely matters.
So, moving on in your biography, you entered Congress in 2018 during the first Trump presidency. Now, with Trump back in office, I think many Europeans are still asking, how did this happen again? So what is your analysis of why the authoritarian politics have gained such traction in the United States?
I think there's a lot of dynamics that feed into that. One is that universally there are material conditions, political conditions, cultural conditions that can sow the seeds for far-right movements. But they are also opportunities to go a different way. One, in terms of material conditions, is that when you have...
Just a question to the mods. Should we turn on subscriber only for a bit? You guys doing okay, or could you use a break? I'm sorry that we even have to ask, but yes, I can handle it. Okay, well let me know, Banana Brains, if you get overwhelmed, or if it just seems like if chat wants them gone, go for it. All right, I'll turn it on. People have been real extra tonight.
Economic stagnation for the working class.
I swear, where do these people come from? It's because we have vertical stream on. We have the dual stream feature on over on YouTube, which makes a vertical chunk. Like, it makes, like, this part right here becomes like a standalone stream that gets broadcast in the YouTube Shorts area, and the conservatives don't watch normally lengthed content anymore because their brains have been rotted, and so they're all in the YouTube Shorts now. And so whenever I have the YouTube Shorts on, they just stream in barely coherent with their rage. Also, Plevius, I don't know why I didn't read it off, but thank you for the $5 dono. Not only was it just too many ums, but there was a subject where the official policy of the United States is, I don't know, maybe, don't F around either of you and you won't find out. Yeah, exactly.
That, especially in an environment where GDP is growing, that is the stuff of populist movements, period. The choice is what direction those populist movements can go. I was at Munich just a few days ago, and this conversation about populism came up, and it was universally derided as negative. And I want to challenge that frame a little bit, because populism at its core means a politics that is directly proximate to the people. And when you have populist movements rising up, almost regardless of their ideology, it is telling us something.
Also, just apropos of nothing, we are currently at 69 subs, thanks to Pluvius. Just wanted to note that. Congrats, and nice.
The ascent of populist movements is telling us that governments have strayed too far from being responsive to the working class. And so populist movements can all have, they are mechanisms of delivery, and it really matters what they deliver. When you have economic stagnation for the working class and GDP is growing, it is an injustice. And one path and one story is, they both frankly need to provide a prescription of why and who is causing this.
I mean, I think that she is doing an extraordinarily good job at summarizing the current moment of populism.
Direction is we are going to blame this on the vulnerable in society, on immigrants, on people of different gender identities, on a cultural or the educated and an anti-intellectualist movement. That's the stuff that right-wing populist movements are made of. And that, of course, is all done as a distraction from the truth, which is that it is economic elites that are taking the lion's share of growth for themselves and leaving crumbs for the working class. So the alternative to the lie, which is that it is the most vulnerable in society that is doing this, the alternative is a populist movement that tells the truth. A populist movement that says, this is an injustice. You are being screwed over. And that story is not a cultural one, but a class one. And that
there is no war but class war. AOC 2026. Look, all I'm going to say here is that she's doing an incredible job explaining this. But when we look at the potential field of candidates for 2028, where is the populist left capable of telling this truth? Who is the avatar of that? Or who could even feasibly be the avatar of that? Bernie Sanders would, but he's too old. He's just too old. Who else do you have? J.B. Pritzker? No. Maybe if he really got his shit together, but no. Gavin Newsom? Fuck no. The only person who could feasibly be the avatar of this kind of populist left movement based in truth, the only person who it could be is AOC. Like, I don't see any other possibilities in the field. Yeah, so far she's the only one who could do it. And like, I've heard Jon Stewart's name kicked around a bit, but like, I don't think Jon Stewart is as far left as a lot of people want him to be. You, Jack, you're the one who could do it. No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
It is a class one.
I think I know who. It's Jeb.
The answer is, I think there's an inherent reaction when we have a right wing blaming any given segment of people to say, no, we stand with those people. It is important to say that, but we have to go deeper. We don't stand with these populations because it is just because it is the morally right thing to do, although it is. We don't stand with them out of the goodness of our hearts or charity. We stand with them because it is strategic. Because we are united as a class, and we will not be divided within our class. And so the alternative truth-telling prescription is not expulsion and targeting of people based on our differences, but a championing of higher wages, stronger safety nets, and accountability to those elites who are abusing our systems and our productivities for themselves. And it is accountability, it is antitrust, it does require a confrontation with power. And that, I think, is what is different about the time that we are coming into. We all need to buckle up. That is the moment that we are in. But if there is any place that shows that good people can prevail over the horrors of inhumanity, it is Berlin. It is Berlin. And it is so many other places around the world that can be a front line to show that we can overcome and we can defeat fascism by a class-based solidarity that champions all of us.
Hell yeah.
Think about this.
Because I think it is important that she's pointing out class-based solidarity that fights for all of us. Because, again, class reductionism is a hell of a drug, and I think it takes us in a very unproductive direction when the reality is we need to stand We need to stand for each other, and we need to stand for an inclusive movement. We cannot have class solidarity while simultaneously throwing part of the class under the bus. Like, for obvious reasons, you can't do that.
I think about this, and I'll end with this note, but I think about this very often because, of course, the universal healthcare systems in Europe are the envy of every American. And it is truly such a revolutionary environment that you all grow up in, the universality of healthcare, because it really is a decision and an affirmative material commitment to everyone's basic humanity, to human dignity. And to me, it is not a coincidence that universal healthcare systems across Europe were established in the wake after World War II. They are directly connected, where you had all of this destruction and all of this rubble that was built on a politics of persecution and division. But when we decided to move past that, we built material systems based on universality, affirming our human dignity. And I think it's so important for us to recall those lessons for today as we confront many of the shadows of those similar movements.
So when it comes to the discussion of the rise of the far right, critics, especially on the conservative political spectrum, often will claim that the political left is partly to blame because it has been too woke or concerned with identity politics. So I know this accusation has been leveled at you at times as well, although whenever I check your social media, you're on the picket line or striking with workers. Nevertheless,
would Tim Walz be a good option? Maybe, but Tim Walz has explicitly said he's not going to run, and I get the impression that he's feeling fairly beaten and beleaguered by everything that's happened in Minnesota specifically. So I don't think he's really up to the task. I thought maybe he would be several months ago, but not anymore.
How do you respond to this accusation that progressive kind of must choose between being pro-worker on the one hand or pro-immigrant, pro-climate, pro-LGBTQ on the other hand?
Yes, well, I think...
Is it valid to think he's weak? Yeah, he's had the opportunity to sign an eviction moratorium for like the last couple months, and he hasn't done it. So, we need a bare minimum of support from the state government, and we're just not really getting that here. And it's shaken my belief that he could even be like passably good at it. So that's kind of where I'm at.
It's true that
frankly, him dropping out of the governor race was a major sign of that weakness, but him continuing to not do anything for folks who are too scared to leave their homes is, kind of the nail in the coffin there.
Prevailing message that I discuss has always been class-based issue.
Yeah, exactly. Being pro-immigrant and pro-working class is the same thing. Immigrants are working class, by and large. And like the entire argument is essentially, should be that, hey, immigrants, whether documented or undocumented, are working class. And not only that, our job right now shouldn't just be, oh, let's get as many undocumented people into the country as we can so that they can be exploited extra hard by corporations and farm owners. Like, no, the solution should be, immigrants and documented and undocumented and native-born Americans, we're all working class, and you know what? We should get the undocumented documented. That the entire solution to this is just document the immigrants and then pay them living wages instead of slave wages. God.
Sometimes immigrants are walk-in class. I need to work on my wok-hay.
What is a wok-hay? Wait a minute. I'm going to Google that. Oh, cooking with the wok. That's true. That's true. I don't have a wok, but I really want one. It's I would like to be able to cook with a wok. It looks really fun and really cool. I also think I'd be bad at it, but you know, I still want to try my hand at it. Also, Sake Tanuki, thank you for the 2 tier 1 subs. Very much appreciated. Thank you for making this show possible. And let's keep on going. We're about done with the section I wanted to check out here with AOC.
There is a political establishment, and I'll call this an economic power establishment in the United States that seeks to use cultural issues as a division. And part of that is also by trying to mischaracterize many on the left as saying, you know, the prevailing thing that we care about is this. But that is why I think it's been so important to move the Overton window on economic issues and to use my platform to do that. That's why I discuss improving and expanding Medicare and making it available to everyone in the United States. Those are the foundational messages that we use to break through. But it also takes many different messengers, and that's part of why political movements, and that's the strategic advantage that we have on the left, which is that we do include everybody. So you can have messengers of all different kinds of identities, races, backgrounds, all echoing united on a similar economic message. Because at the end of the day, we all are more resonant with differing communities. And that's why all of us together are able to say something that breaks through. It can't just be all on one person. And that's why I'm so grateful for the diversity of so many people on the left, of men on the left, of women on the left, of just people of all different races and backgrounds. We have to operate as a choir to get the message through.
You alluded to the fact that Germany indeed has a pretty strong welfare state, stronger than the US. We have minimum wage, universal health care, no university tuition, strong labor protections. So while the German working class is in general more protected in an economic sense, it also is dealing with the growing inequality, because we have seen a real wage growth has been stagnant. The amassment of wealth in the hands of very few and corporations is increasing. So even though the safeguarding is a bit higher, the relative inequality is increasing and is at the root, like you said, of this polarization. So you made the case in Munich also for fighting this amassment of wealth in the hands of few. I'm curious, how did the good people of Munich react for you to make the case for more wealth distribution?
Yes, well, I was on the populist panel, which was very funny. I think that there were differing dynamics, of course, in Munich. And one is that you are starting to see the ascent of the right, even in places like Munich. Marco Rubio's speech was a pure appeal to Western culture. My favorite part was when he said that American cowboys came from Spain.
Is it time to open carry at protests? Absolutely not.
I thought they came from Winnetou, but
I believe the Mexicans and descendants of African enslaved peoples would like to have a word on
True.
That
original cowboys.
But I think it's also important to note how thin that foundation is. Culture is changing. Culture always changed. Culture for the entire history of human civilization has been a fluid, evolving thing that is a response to the conditions that we live in. And so they want to take this mantle of culture. At the end of the day, though, it is very thin. And so the response that we have to have is, again, it's material, it's class-based, it's common interest. And so I think what was interesting about the reception is that
the solution is tax the rich. Shocking, I know.
I think the old way is realizing that they've had their way. They've had their economic deals structured exactly the way that they wanted it. They've had their, all of the ways you can govern, they've had their way in doing it, and they are losing ground. And so I think while there was certainly more openness to what I was saying than probably there would be in years past, we can't underestimate the appeal of going back to these well-worn grooves. A lot of what we talk about when we talk about a class-based internationalist perspective also means ending the hypocrisy towards the global South.
True. Because this is, I think, incredibly important, which is recognizing that income inequality is going to continue to go up for as long as capitalists are able to export labor to places where markets are unregulated, where labor conditions are unregulated. It's why offshoring happened in the first place. It's why offshoring continues. Labor keeps being shuffled around to different places. And the fact that she is willing to say this, I mean, it's a pretty significant break from the larger Democratic Party. The larger Democratic Party generally does not want to focus on this being an international problem, because that would acknowledge that the system of capital itself is broken. And so I think that this is an interesting thing, an interesting observation that is correctly and aptly made by AOC here. And I think it is why ultimately she's going to be able to tap into this left-wing populism, this growing tide of anger at the fact that elites have been constantly screwing us over through the medium of, establishment Democrats, as well as the entire MAGA party. It's riddled with elites backing this movement so that we all get screwed over. And so I think that this is a really, if she is in fact running, which I think she should, this is a really important difference to strike between herself and establishment Democrats.
That is a challenge that is difficult for much of the typical crowd at Munich to hear. We look at what happened in Venezuela, for example. It is not a it is not a remark on who Maduro was as a leader. He canceled elections. He was an anti-democratic leader. That doesn't mean that we can kidnap a head of state and engage in acts of war just because the nation is below the equator. And by the way, Rubio and the Trump administration left Maduro's regime intact. And so even whatever moralizing they have about it, they're just as much a culprit in ignoring the election results as anybody else. But also, we have to understand that when they come for one, they come for us all. It's not a coincidence that when there was such a meek reaction to what happened in Venezuela, they immediately turned around and set their sights on Greenland. And that is why we have to recognize that respecting these standards and strengthening them across the world is what ultimately what protects all of us individually as well.
Yes, and it's important to reiterate that the case of Venezuela is not complicated or complex from an international law legal standpoint, but very clear. Let me move on to the transatlantic relations. And one of the key issues at the core of the fray we have experienced in the past year is the trade policy that the United States has leveled as political leverage against Europe, but also other parts of the world as well.
We could keep watching this for the entire rest of the night. I think this is where we're going to cut this particular thing. Overall, I think she is incredibly well-positioned here. If she is not prepping for a run, like, it's a wasted opportunity. And as I said at the very beginning of this, there's genuinely no downside for her running in the Democratic primary. Either she's setting herself up for a future win, or she wins outright. And I think she's one of the few candidates who could actually live up to the current time. And Dragonfly, you fucking called it. I'm now on the same boat. I think AOC is gonna run, and I think this Munich conference really was her time to let the world know that she was, thinking about it. She should run. Yeah, absolutely, she should run. She's by far the most popular candidate in most well-received, well-regarded Democrat in the running for potential president in 2028. So we'll have to see how this goes. But overall, I'm very impressed by this showing. And I'm hearing some of you guys want the link so you can check out the rest. Here you go. Here you go. Here you go. The other two appearances she had at Munich are also on the channel that I linked you guys, so you can check out the other appearances there as well. If she isn't preparing for a run, well, there was reporting from NBC that her close friends and colleagues and allies have been saying that she might in fact be running. So I think, again, the reason Kamala Harris didn't win the last election was because she pivoted. She pivoted in order to incorporate messaging from her Uber executive consultant advisor. It just didn't. Who I think was her brother-in-law, if I'm remembering right. I think she would actually. I think she'd do really well in the election. I think she'd do well as president. Yeah. Then you have the fucking Gaza genocide weighing her down like a cinder block, which at the very least, AOC seems to be someone who would actually use her power to try and bring an end to that. However flawed folks might consider her, I do think she would actually use her weight as a president to try and end the abuse of Gazans and Palestinians. Gavin Newsom AOC ticket? Nah, that's not gonna happen. That Gavin Newsom is not gonna pick AOC to be on his ticket. And I don't think AOC would accept that over her own dead body. I don't think she would do that. Anyway, I just think that she would do a great job. And hopefully, I in this field, I don't see anyone else
willing to hear far more direct condemnation from her on Jeffries, Schumer, and Federoger.
Federoger, indeed. Yeah, I mean, I also think that she is trying to be as diplomatic as she can be. And I think her statements here are a condemnation of Jeffries, Schumer, Federoger, and the folks like them. I don't know that we're going to get her saying fuck Chuck Schumer, as much as I really, really want that to happen, largely because her strategy has seemingly been to attempt to stay on at least semi-positive terms with these folks so that she can attempt to negotiate them into better positions. And that has had, mixed success at best. That being said, I think that might pay off if she is the one in the driver's seat. And, well, frankly, I don't think Fetterman is rehabilitatable. Like, I think he's just gone. And is going to stay gone, regardless of what is said. Chip, I do encourage you all to check out the full speeches, especially if you've been getting fed information about, like, AOC's stupid, this went over poorly. She got applause for her answers. She did just fine. I will also say later on in this college Q&A session that she did, she does take questions on Palestine. I think her answers were pretty good. Not perfect, but pretty good. And yeah, I just think that I think she'd be a good candidate. There's no one else stepping up to the plate. AOC, I hope you run. I'll be knocking doors and phone banking for you. So we're doing whatever I can to organize for you, if you do. And I know a lot of other people will as well. Because goddamn it, can we not let Gavin Newsom have that? Like, who else? Pete Buttigieg? Kamala Harris a second time? No. These are all terrible options. So, folks, we got to get organized. Join your local Dems. Join your local DSA. Let's do our best to get organized as hell for the midterms. And so we can be organized for the 2028 election. It is very, very important that we get our shit together before it is right up to the deadline, okay? And if you got anything out of this, please hit the like button. Leave a comment, especially on these longer segments. Comments are really, really important. And hit the subscribe button if you haven't. And last but not least, check out ImogeneOlivia.com. Gender euphoric lingerie designed from the ground up for trans femmes, tested with cis men, cis women, non-binary folks, non-tucking lingerie. It's really great. Check it out. New sizes, colors, styles coming in the near future. Link down in the doobly-doo. Let's keep on going.
Riverboat Jack is coming to town. All the viewers gather around. Twitch and YouTube and switching streams. All that content is bursting the scenes. Politics, daily, flame more. Your sense of fashion, you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord.